I'll fix that racing engine for a sandwich." The words hung in the air like exhaust on a cold morning. Laughter erupted. Mockery followed. Anthony stood motionless, dignity intact despite the hunger gnawing at him. Elite performance. Otto's fluorescent lights exposed every thread of his worn clothes but missed the expertise in his steady hands. Mike, the owner, smirked at his staff. A teaching moment about society's bottom rung. None realized the man before them had once made racing engines scream to victory across 3 continents. The humiliation would last minutes. The reversal? That would echo for years. First comes ridicule, then silence, then awe. Elite Performance Auto occupied prime real estate in downtown Charlotte, all gleaming tools and racing memorabilia. Pristine floors reflected overhead lights that illuminated 5 service bays, where mechanics in matching uniforms tended to vehicles worth more than most homes. At the center of this automotive shrine stood Mike Donovan, owner and self-proclaimed racing expert. His carefully maintained salt and pepper hair and designer work clothes projected the image he'd cultivated. Successful businessman who hadn't forgotten his roots turning wrenches. "Henderson wants that GT3 ready for Watkins Glen by Friday," Mike announced, slapping a work order against his palm. "That's a $50,000 client who expects perfection." His mechanics nodded. They knew the drill. Elite specialized in high-performance vehicles, particularly those headed for amateur racing circuits. Their reputation commanded premium rates and attracted clients who expected miracles performed overnight. "Problem is," Mike continued, lowering his voice for dramatic effect, "nobody can figure out why it's misfiring above 5,000 RPM. 3 shops before us couldn't solve it." Sam, the youngest mechanic, studied the silver Porsche with concern. "ECU's clean, fuel pressure's perfect, plugs are gapped right. And yet it stumbles exactly when Henderson needs all the power." Mike's frustration was evident. This is the kind of problem that builds or breaks reputations. Outside, beyond the spotless glass facade, Anthony Williams observed the garage with practiced eyes. 3 days watching this place had confirmed what he needed to know. They were skilled, equipped, and struggling with a problem he'd solved dozens of times during his career. His stomach growled, a painful reminder of 48 hours without a proper meal. Anthony adjusted his backpack, feeling the familiar weight of racing gloves wrapped in plastic at the bottom, the last remnants of his former life he couldn't bear to part with. His once muscular frame had thinned during 6 months of homelessness, but his hands remained steady, his mind sharp. He watched the mechanics cluster around the Porsche, their body language telling him everything about their frustration. His eyes narrowed at the car. German engineering. Temperamental at high RPMs. He could already visualize the likely culprits. Anthony hadn't always been invisible. For 12 years, he'd been the mechanical genius behind Velocity Racing's championship streak, the man drivers requested by name. His solutions had become industry standards, his diagnostic instincts, legendary. Then came the accusation, the tabloid headlines, the trial that cleared his name but drained his savings and destroyed his reputation. One safety failure he hadn't caused, one wealthy team owner needing a scapegoat. The racing world had moved on without him. "Today's different," he whispered to himself, straightening his worn jacket. The choice between pride and hunger had finally reached its breaking point. Inside, Mike gathered his team for the morning meeting. "Peterson wants his Camaro by Wednesday, and the Henderson Porsche is priority 1. Anyone who solves that misfire gets the bonus this month." He paused as the front door opened, frowning at the interruption. Anthony stepped inside, the temperature difference between the brisk morning air and heated garage forming a small cloud around him. Conversations halted, eyes turned. He felt the weight of stares, some curious, some immediately dismissive, all evaluating his worth based on appearance alone. Sam whispered something to his colleague. A few snickers followed. Mike's expression hardened as he assessed the potential threat to his pristine establishment. "We don't need any windows washed," Mike called out, drawing laughs from half his staff. "Soliciting isn't allowed here." Anthony remained still, gathering himself. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but clear. "I'm not here to wash anything. I'm here about work." "Work?" Mike's eyebrows rose dramatically. "Does this look like an employment agency to you?" "No." Anthony's eyes moved deliberately to the silver Porsche. "It looks like a shop with a GT3 that's misfiring above 5,000 RPM. The mechanics exchanged glances. Mike's smile faded slightly. "I need food," Anthony continued. "I'll diagnose your problem in exchange for a meal. Fix it too, if you'll let me." The laughter that followed was immediate and harsh. Mike crossed his arms, theatrical in his amusement. "You hear that, boys? Our homeless friend here is going to fix what 3 professional shops couldn't." He made a show of looking Anthony up and down. "And where exactly did you get your Porsche certification?" "The public library's automotive section?" More laughter. Anthony didn't move, didn't flinch. His eyes remained on the car, assessing, calculating. "I worked 12 years at Velocity Racing. I specialized in performance issues on track cars." A beat of silence followed before the laughter resumed, louder this time. "And I'm Dale Earnhardt," one mechanic called out. "Back from the dead." Mike raised his hand, suddenly playing the magnanimous leader. Now, maybe our friend here did wash some cars at a racetrack once." He turned to Anthony, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Look, buddy, we don't have any positions. There's a shelter 3 miles east that serves breakfast until 9. Anthony stood his ground. "Your Porsche has a harmonic resonance issue, probably in the intake system. That's why it only happens at high RPM when the frequency matches the resonant point." The smiles faltered slightly. Sam straightened up, interest flickering across his young face. "How would you know that without even looking under the hood?" Mike challenged. "Because I've built engines that win races. Because I've fixed this exact problem on similar models." Anthony's voice remained steady, matter of fact. "And because right now it's the only thing of value I have to trade for a meal." Mike's expression shifted, annoyance replacing amusement. This was no longer entertaining. This was someone challenging his authority in front of his team. His status required a response. "You know what? I think we could all use a good laugh today." Mike gestured toward the Porsche. "Sam, get our guests some gloves. Let's see the Velocity Racing Master at work." Anthony recognized the trap. They weren't giving him a chance. They were setting him up for public humiliation. But the gnawing emptiness in his stomach left no choice. Sometimes dignity had to be temporarily sacrificed to survive. "Thank you," he said simply, ignoring the snickers as he walked toward the car that would either feed him or complete his humiliation. Sam tossed a pair of latex gloves toward Anthony, not quite meeting his eyes. "Don't mess anything up. That car's worth more than you'll see in a lifetime." Anthony caught the gloves with unexpected grace, his movements fluid despite hunger. He pulled them on deliberately, a muscle memory from thousands of similar moments. The garage had gone quiet, mechanics positioning themselves to witness the anticipated failure. "Clock's ticking," Mike announced, checking his watch with exaggerated motion. "My guys have real work to do." Anthony approached the Porsche methodically. He circled it once, examining external details that most would overlook. The angle of the aftermarket exhaust tips, the subtle modifications to the air intakes. His fingers traced the edge of the hood before releasing the latch. "Careful with that," a mechanic called out. "Owner doesn't like fingerprints." Anthony lifted the hood with practiced precision, securing it without comment. His eyes scanned the engine bay systematically, taking inventory. The 4.0-liter flat six had been modified larger throttle bodies, upgraded headers, custom intake. Professional work, but with potential for harmonic issues. I'll need a diagnostics tablet, he said quietly. Mike snorted. What, you think we're just handing over our equipment to some random guy off the street? Use your magical racing powers. Laughter rippled through the garage. Anthony's expression remained neutral as he bent closer to the engine, examining connections by touch and sight alone. Could I at least hear it run? The misfire happens above 5,000 RPM. Correct. Mike crossed his arms. Sam, start it up. Let's see if our guest here jumps when it backfires. Sam slid into the driver's seat, his movements betraying nervousness. The engine roared to life, its deep rumble filling the garage. Anthony closed his eyes briefly, listening beyond the obvious power to the subtle harmonics underneath. Rev it slowly through the range, he instructed. Sam looked to Mike, who nodded permission with a smirk. The engine note climbed steadily, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 RPM. At 5,200, the smooth sound fractured, a hesitation followed by an uneven stutter. Again, Anthony said, his head now positioned near the intake manifold. Hold it at 5,200 if you can. Sam complied. Anthony moved with sudden purpose, his hands following the intake tract with practiced confidence. When the engine quieted, he straightened up. It's the variable intake system interacting with your aftermarket components. The resonance creates a pressure wave at specific frequencies that disrupts your air-fuel mixture. Mike's smirk didn't waver. That's a nice theory from someone who hasn't even used a scanner. Very impressive technical jargon. I don't need a scanner to hear harmonic resonance, Anthony replied. But I'll need tools to fix it. Oh, we've moved on to fixing now? Mike laughed, playing to his audience. Tell you what, since you're so confident, let's make this interesting. Fix the problem that stumped 3 shops, and I'll give you $100 plus lunch. Fail, and you leave without bothering my business again. I don't need $100, Anthony said quietly. Just food. The offer stands. Fix it or leave. Mike's tone hardened, challenge implicit. Anthony looked around at the watching faces, most skeptical, a few curious, none sympathetic. I'll need basic hand tools. 10mm socket set, screwdrivers, needle nose pliers, and about 30 minutes. 20, Mike countered. Sam, get him the basics. The clock starts now. He made a show of setting a timer on his phone. Sam reluctantly assembled a small toolbox of essentials, handing it over with visible doubt. These tools are organized by size, metric separate from standard. I see that. Anthony took the box with a nod of thanks, his first hint of professional courtesy cutting through the tension. He turned to the engine, tools in hand, his back to the watching mechanics. For a moment, the facade of homelessness seemed to fall away. His posture shifted subtly, shoulders squared, hands steady, movements economical. He worked with quiet efficiency, removing the engine cover, then accessing the intake system with practiced ease. He actually seems to know where everything is, Sam whispered to another mechanic. Broken clocks right twice a day, came the dismissive reply. Mike checked his timer. 5 minutes gone. Better hurry, miracle worker. Anthony didn't respond, fully absorbed in his work. His fingers traced an air channel, pausing at a specific point. The resonator chamber has been modified incorrectly, he murmured, more to himself than his audience. It's creating turbulence at exactly the wrong frequency. He reached deeper into the engine bay, manipulating components with surprising dexterity. His movements became more deliberate, each action building on the previous with logical progression. No wasted motion, no hesitation. The hallmarks of someone who had performed similar tasks countless times. Sam edged closer, professional curiosity overcoming skepticism. What are you doing with the intake runner? Anthony answered without looking up. The harmonic frequency needs dampening. I'm creating a temporary solution by adjusting the resonator chamber and restricting the problematic air path. That's actually what our diagnostic computer suggested. Sam admitted, earning a sharp look from Mike. Computers follow programming. Mechanics follow experience. Anthony extracted his hands from the engine bay and reached for a different tool. This engine's been modified by someone who understood power, but not harmonics. For 15 minutes, the garage remained uncharacteristically quiet, the only sounds Anthony's methodical work and occasional requests for specific tools. Even Mike's theatrical sighs grew less frequent as he watched Anthony's confidence with the complex engine. At exactly 18 minutes, Anthony straightened up. "It's ready for testing." Mike's eyebrows rose. "That's it? You moved some tubes around?" "I retuned the resonator chamber, adjusted the intake runner geometry, and corrected the harmonic balance." Anthony stepped back from the car. "It will hold until proper parts can be fabricated, but it won't misfire anymore." "Big claims from a street mechanic," Mike said, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "Sam, fire it up. Let's see this miracle fix." Sam slid into the driver's seat again, his expression now curious rather than dismissive. The engine started with its characteristic rumble. He revved it cautiously at first, then with growing confidence, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 RPM. When it crossed 5,200, the previous stutter was noticeably absent. Sam pushed further, the engine climbing smoothly past 6,000 RPM. The garage had gone completely silent. "Take it to 7,000, Anthony said quietly. Sam complied. The engine responded with a clean, powerful roar throughout the range. No hesitation, no misfire. Perfect performance. When the engine quieted, Anthony spoke into the stunned silence. "I don't need your belief. I just fixed your broken engine." Mike's expression tightened, professional pride warring with undeniable evidence. The Porsche's engine had performed flawlessly through multiple test runs, a problem that had frustrated his team for days, solved in less than 20 minutes by a homeless man. "Lucky guess," he finally said, voice pitched low for his nearby mechanics. "Probably just coincidence that it's running better." Sam shut down the engine, excitement visible on his young face. "Boss, that was incredible. It's never run that clean above 5,000. "It's a temporary fix," Anthony clarified, methodically cleaning and replacing tools in their proper positions. "The harmonic issue needs a permanent solution, a custom-fabricated resonator tuned to the modified intake. But it won't misfire now." Mike stepped forward, physically inserting himself between Anthony and the growing circle of impressed mechanics. "Let's not get carried away. We don't know if it'll hold under actual driving conditions." "It will," Anthony stated with quiet certainty. He closed the tool case with a soft click. Mike checked his watch with deliberate slowness. "Well, I suppose you've earned your sandwich. Sam, run across to the deli and get... What's your name, anyway?" "Anthony. Anthony Williams. Get Anthony here something to eat." Mike pulled out his wallet and handed Sam a $20 bill, the gesture carefully calibrated to demonstrate both generosity and power. "We keep our promises, even the ridiculous ones." As Sam headed toward the door, one of the older mechanics narrowed his eyes at Anthony. "Williams, from Velocity Racing? That name sounds familiar." Anthony's face remained impassive. "It's a common name." "No, I remember something about a Williams at Velocity, some scandal a few years back." Mike seized the thread, his confidence returning. "Oh? Our miracle worker has a history?" "I said I worked at Velocity. I didn't say how it ended." Anthony's voice remained steady, but his shoulders tensed slightly. Mike sensed vulnerability and pressed his advantage. "You know, now that he mentions it, I remember something too. Wasn't there a Williams who got fired over some safety failure? Car went into the wall at Daytona?" The garage atmosphere shifted, mechanics exchanging glances. Anthony stood perfectly still, his expression controlled but eyes suddenly distant. "That's not what happened," he said quietly. No? Mike's smile returned, sharp and knowing. Because I'm pretty sure I remember reading about a mechanic who cut corners and nearly got a driver killed. The investigation cleared me. The failure was manufacturing defect, not installation error. That's not how I heard it. Mike turned to his staff. See, boys? This is why credentials and reputation matter in this business. Anyone can get lucky once. The momentary respect Anthony had earned began evaporating. Several mechanics stepped back, their expressions cooling. Only Sam, returning with a sandwich, seemed oblivious to the shift. Here you go, he said, handing the wrapped food to Anthony. They had turkey or ham. I got turkey. Thank you. Anthony accepted the sandwich without taking his eyes off Mike, who was now clearly enjoying his reclaimed dominance. So, let me guess, Mike continued. After Velocity let you go, no other team would touch you. One mistake cost you everything. It wasn't my mistake. Anthony's voice hardened slightly. But yes, racing teams don't hire mechanics with controversy attached to their names. Sponsors don't like it. And now you're what, living in your car? A shelter? Mike's smile was without warmth. How the mighty have fallen. Anthony unwrapped his sandwich with deliberate care. Neither. I've been on the street since my savings ran out. A flicker of genuine surprise crossed Mike's face before he masked it. Well, that's unfortunate. But this is a business, not a charity. You've got your food, we've got our engine running. Transaction complete. Anthony took a careful bite, chewing methodically, clearly savoring actual sustenance. The garage had become uncomfortable, mechanics finding sudden interest in various tasks. Only Sam remained, hovering uncertainly. The Henderson Porsche will need proper fabrication for a permanent fix, Anthony said after swallowing. I can draw the specs if you'd like. Mike waved dismissively. We can handle it from here. My team knows what to look for now. Do they? Anthony asked, his voice level. Because that car has 4 other issues that will surface within the next 500 miles. The left rear damper is showing early signs of failure. The fuel pressure regulator is fluctuating at temperature. The dash. That's enough. Mike cut him off sharply. You got lucky with a resonance issue. Don't push it. Sam glanced between them, then blurted out, How could you possibly know about the damper? The car pulls slightly during deceleration. Not enough to notice on the street, but critical on a track. Anthony took another measured bite of his sandwich. We actually had that on our inspection list to check, Sam admitted, earning another glare from Mike. Sam, don't you have work to do? Mike's voice carried a clear warning. But boss, if he knows about other problems, he doesn't know anything. He got lucky once. Now he's fishing for more handouts. Mike turned back to Anthony, professional smile firmly in place. Thank you for your assistance. Enjoy your meal. The door's that way. Anthony finished his sandwich in silence, meticulously folding the wrapper before placing it in a nearby trash can. He shouldered his worn backpack, then paused, looking directly at Mike. The Henderson Porsche will fail at Watkins Glen without proper attention to those issues. Mike's smile vanished. Are you threatening me? No, just stating facts. Anthony's eyes moved to the silver car. That machine deserves better than political egos. Get out of my shop. Mike's voice dropped dangerously. Now. Anthony turned toward the door, his dignity intact despite the dismissal. He had almost reached it when a new voice cut through the tension. Who the hell put my car right? Every head turned toward the entrance where a tall man in expensive racing gear stood, eyes moving from face to face. Henderson, Mike's voice instantly transformed, warm and professional. We were just finishing up with your GT3. Good news, we've solved the misfire issue. Henderson stepped further into the garage, expressions skeptical. Really? Because I just got a call from my buddy at Prestige Motorsports who said they couldn't fix it, and neither could anyone else. Well, we're not anyone else, Mike said with manufactured confidence. Elite Performance lives up to its name. Henderson approached his Porsche, running an appreciative hand along its flank. Mind if I hear it? Of course not. Sam, fire up Mr. Henderson's car. As Sam hurried to comply, Henderson noticed Anthony near the door. Something about the homeless man's bearing caught his attention, the way he watched the car with knowledgeable eyes. The engine roared to life, Sam revving it through the range that had previously caused problems. It performed flawlessly, the sound pure mechanical symphony. Well, I'll be damned, Henderson said, genuine surprise in his voice. That's the best it's sounded since the modifications. He turned to Mike. What was the issue? Mike straightened his shoulders. Harmonic resonance in the intake system. Once we identified the problem, the solution was straightforward. Harmonic resonance? Henderson's eyebrows rose. That's exactly what Jake Thompson used to talk about at Velocity. He always said his chief mechanic was obsessed with harmonic balancing in high-performance engines. Anthony had frozen at the door, his back to the room. Mike's confident smile faltered slightly. Henderson continued. Thompson said he had this one guy, Williams, I think, who could diagnose resonance issues just by listening to an engine. His eyes narrowed suddenly, gaze shifting between Mike and Anthony's motionless form. Wait a minute. Anthony Williams, Henderson called out, his tone shifting from curiosity to disbelief. Anthony Williams from Velocity Racing? The garage fell silent. Anthony turned slowly, his expression carefully neutral. Hello, Mr. Henderson? His voice carried the quiet confidence of someone who recognized the inevitable. It's been a while. Henderson stared, processing the disconnect between the man he remembered and the figure before him. My God, it is you. Jake Thompson's right-hand man. He looked around the garage, confusion evident. What are you doing here? And looking like? He gestured vaguely at Anthony's worn appearance. Mike stepped forward, inserting himself into the conversation. You know this man? Know him? Henderson laughed incredulously. Anthony Williams was the most sought-after performance mechanic in racing for years. Velocity won 3 championships with him heading their mechanical team. His eyes narrowed. Then there was that controversy with the component failure at Daytona. Anthony stood perfectly still, neither confirming nor denying. That was your car? Mike asked, his voice strained. The one he supposedly... He didn't do anything wrong, Henderson interrupted firmly. The investigation cleared him completely. Manufacturing defect in a titanium component that passed all standard inspections. Could have happened to anyone. The papers said, Mike began. The papers printed what sold copies, Henderson cut him off again. Racing insiders knew the truth. Williams got railroaded because the team owner needed a scapegoat for the sponsors. The garage had gone utterly quiet, every mechanic frozen in place, watching the scene unfold. Sam's mouth hung slightly open. Henderson turned back to Anthony. But that doesn't explain... this. He gestured at Anthony's disheveled appearance. What happened after Velocity? You should have had teams lining up. Anthony's shoulders straightened slightly, a hint of his former professional bearing emerging. Racing teams follow sponsors. Sponsors follow public perception. My name became toxic after the headlines. He shrugged, a small gesture containing years of disappointment. I found work with smaller teams for a while, but nothing permanent. When the economy tightened, I was always the first let go. But how did you end up... Henderson couldn't bring himself to finish the question. Homeless? Anthony supplied the word without flinching. Savings run out eventually. Medical bills don't pay themselves. Henderson shook his head in disbelief, then turned sharply to Mike. So let me get this straight. Anthony Williams walks into your shop, fixes my car when 3 other shops couldn't, and you… what? We're giving him a sandwich as severance pay? Mike's face flushed. The power dynamics had shifted dramatically, leaving him scrambling. We didn't know who he was. He came in asking for food in exchange for work. And did that work? Henderson pointed out coldly. Yes, but did you know who he was? Henderson pressed. Mike swallowed visibly. Not until just now. Henderson turned back to Anthony. You fixed my car? The resonance issue? Anthony nodded once. Temporary solution. It needs a custom fabricated resonator to match your modifications for a permanent fix. Of course it does, Henderson murmured, a slow smile spreading across his face. Because that's exactly what you told my buddy Thompson about his GT2 3 years ago. He stepped closer to Anthony. Closer to, you recognize the problem just by hearing it. And seeing the modifications, Anthony added. Your intake system creates pressure waves at specific RPMs. I adjusted the chamber geometry to compensate temporarily. Henderson turned to face the assembled mechanics. Do you people have any idea who's been standing in your garage? This man revolutionized harmonic balancing in racing engines. His techniques for pressure wave management are taught in performance schools. Sam stepped forward hesitantly. He mentioned other issues with your car too, sir. Something about the rear damper and fuel pressure regulator. Henderson's eyebrows shot up. Is that right? The left rear damper is showing early signs of failure, Anthony confirmed quietly. It's subtle, but you'll feel it in hard corners at Watkins Glen. The fuel pressure regulator fluctuates at temperature, which will affect your power band in longer sessions. Henderson stared at him for a long moment, then let out a sharp laugh. Diagnosed from just watching the car roll in? That's the Anthony Williams I heard about. He shook his head in wonder. Jake Thompson used to say you had some kind of mechanical sixth sense. Just experience, Anthony demurred. I've built and rebuilt enough race engines to recognize the patterns. Mike cleared his throat, clearly attempting to regain control of the situation. Mr. Henderson, I assure you we were planning to do a complete inspection. Save it. Henderson cut him off without looking away from Anthony. He pulled out his phone, scrolled briefly, then held up the screen. This is you, isn't it? On the screen was a photo from a racing magazine. A younger, healthier Anthony in Velocity racing uniform, surrounded by trophies, adjusting a complex engine as drivers looked on admiringly. The garage fell completely silent. Every mechanic stared at the contrast between the image and the man before them. Anthony nodded once. Different lifetime. Henderson lowered the phone, his expression hardening with decision. I need someone who understands my car for Watkins Glen, someone who can make it perform beyond its potential. He looked directly at Anthony. I want you at the track with me this weekend. Mike stepped forward quickly. Mr. Henderson, Elite Performance would be happy to send our best team to support you at… Not interested, Henderson dismissed without looking at him. I want Williams. I don't have credentials anymore, Anthony said quietly. No licenses, no official status. You'll be my personal guest, Henderson countered. My car, my choice. He eyed Anthony's appearance. We'll need to get you cleaned up, proper clothes, equipment. Anthony stood motionless, processing the sudden reversal of fortune. Why would you trust me after so long out of the circuit? Because you just fixed in 20 minutes what 3 shops couldn't figure out in weeks, Henderson replied simply. Because Jake Thompson still talks about you as the best he ever worked with, and because I know talent doesn't just disappear. From the corner, Sam suddenly blurted, Holy shit, I found it! All eyes turned to him as he held up his phone. Anthony Williams, Velocity Racing 6 Innovation Awards, 12 first-place finishes as chief mechanic, creator of the Williams method for harmonic balancing. He looked up, eyes wide. There are technical papers with your name on them in engineering journals. One by one, the mechanics pulled out their phones, searching Anthony's name. The atmosphere in the garage transformed as they discovered who had been standing among them, whose expertise they had mocked. The Williams throttle mapping technique? The pressure wave reduction system? That was you? Anthony remained still as his professional legacy unfurled around him, neither prideful nor diminished by the revelations. His eyes remained on Henderson, evaluating the offer with careful consideration. Mike's face had gone pale as he scrolled through his own phone, absorbing the magnitude of his misjudgment. The man he'd condescended to, whose expertise he'd dismissed, had been an industry legend in disguise. "Mr. Williams," he began, his tone dramatically different, "I want to extend my sincerest apologies for the misunderstanding earlier. Had we known of your distinguished background, you would have treated me differently." Anthony finished for him. That's the problem, isn't it? The simple observation hung in the air, indicting more than just Mike. The entire garage fell silent again, mechanics looking anywhere but at Anthony or each other. Henderson broke the uncomfortable moment. "So, Williams, are you coming to Watkins Glen with me? I'll handle all expenses, plus a proper consultant's fee." Anthony looked down at his worn backpack, then around at the faces watching him, some ashamed, some amazed, all recalibrating their understanding of the man before them. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. "I'll need to see the complete maintenance records for the GT3, and dyno time to verify the fixes before we transport it." Henderson grinned. Done and done. He extended his hand. After a brief hesitation, Anthony reached out and shook it. A simple gesture that somehow represented everything: professional recognition, restored dignity, a second chance. Sam whispered loudly to another mechanic, "Did we just witness the most epic comeback ever?" The garage remained suspended in stunned silence, watching as the homeless man they had ridiculed transformed before their eyes into the expert they would have revered had they bothered to look beyond appearances. "I'd like Anthony to use our equipment to properly prepare your car," Mike announced, stepping forward with manufactured enthusiasm. "Elite Performance would be honored to support his work." Henderson raised an eyebrow. "The same equipment you refused him 20 minutes ago?" Mike's smile faltered. "That was before we understood the situation." "Before you knew his name," Henderson corrected flatly. "Before you realized he was someone worth respecting." The mechanics shifted uncomfortably. Anthony remained silent, his expression neutral as he observed the power dynamics realigning around him. "Perhaps we could discuss this in my office," Mike suggested, gesturing toward the back of the garage. "Mr. Williams, I'm sure we can come to an arrangement that benefits everyone." Anthony tilted his head slightly. "What changed, Mr. Donovan?" "I'm sorry? What changed between when I walked in and now?" Anthony's voice remained level, neither accusatory nor angry, simply inquiring. Mike's professional veneer cracked slightly. "Well, obviously, we now know about your impressive background." "My abilities didn't change," Anthony pointed out. "Only your perception of them." The garage had gone utterly still, mechanics frozen in place as the confrontation unfolded. No one had expected the homeless man to challenge the shop owner so directly or so calmly. Henderson watched with undisguised interest, making no move to interrupt. Mike struggled visibly, caught between saving face and acknowledging the truth. "Look, Williams, you have to understand how it looked. A stranger walks in off the street claiming expertise." "I didn't claim expertise," Anthony interrupted quietly. "I demonstrated it. You chose not to see it until someone with status confirmed it for you." The words hung in the air, impossible to dismiss. Several mechanics looked at the floor, recognition flickering across their faces. Sam stepped forward suddenly. "He's right, boss." We all laughed, but he fixed the car while we watched. That should have been enough. Mike shot him a warning glance, but Sam continued. I mean, we're mechanics. We're supposed to respect skill when we see it, right? Isn't that what you always tell us? A murmur of agreement rippled through the staff. The power balance in the room had shifted irrevocably. Henderson cleared his throat. As fascinating as this ethics seminar is, I need decisions made. Williams, I want you on my team for Watkins Glen. Are you in? Before Anthony could answer, the glass door swung open again. A tall man in racing team apparel stepped inside, his confident stride faltering as he surveyed the unusual tableau. Jake, Henderson exclaimed, what are you doing here? Jake Thompson, Velocity Racing's legendary team manager, grinned. Came to see your problem Porsche. My flight got in early. His eyes scanned the room, then stopped abruptly on Anthony. Recognition dawned instantly. Williams? Anthony Williams? Anthony nodded once. Hello, Jake. Thompson stared in disbelief, taking in Anthony's weathered appearance. My God, where have you been? I've had people looking for you for months. Looking for me? Anthony's composure slipped for the first time, genuine surprise crossing his face. Of course. Thompson crossed the room in quick strides. When that manufacturing defect was officially documented by the safety board, I tried to reach you. Your phone was disconnected. Your apartment emptied. I couldn't afford to keep either, Anthony admitted quietly. Thompson shook his head in dismay. You should have contacted me. The team owner who pushed you out is gone. New ownership, new management. He glanced at Henderson. How did you find him? Henderson laughed. I didn't. He found my car and fixed the problem 3 shops couldn't solve in 20 minutes flat. Thompson turned back to Anthony, his expression brightening. That sounds like the Williams I know. He hesitated, then added with uncharacteristic emotion, the team hasn't been the same without you. No one understands pressure harmonics like you do. The garage had gone completely silent again, every person present aware they were witnessing something extraordinary. Mike stood frozen, watching his authority diminish with each passing moment. Thompson straightened suddenly, his casual tone belying the significance of his next words. Velocity is rebuilding. We need our best people back. He looked directly at Anthony. I've got a position waiting for you. Chief of Performance Engineering. Same as before, but with a proper title this time. A collective intake of breath swept through the garage. Even Henderson looked surprised. Anthony's expression remained carefully controlled. That's unexpected. It shouldn't be, Thompson replied firmly. You were the best we ever had. The safety board's report proved what we already knew. You were the scapegoat, not the problem. He extended his hand. Come back where you belong, Williams. The garage held its collective breath. Mike's face had drained of all color as he watched his morning unravel completely. Anthony looked down at Thompson's outstretched hand, then around at the faces watching him. Henderson's interest, the mechanic's amazement, Mike's dismay. For a brief moment, his gaze lingered on Sam, whose expression showed genuine happiness at this turn of events. When Anthony finally spoke, his voice carried the quiet authority that had once commanded racing teams across 3 continents. I'll need some conditions, Jake. Thompson nodded immediately. Name them. A written contract, housing assistance for the first month, and, he paused, looking around the garage, an apprenticeship position for someone with genuine interest in harmonic engineering. Sam's eyes widened. Thompson didn't hesitate. Done, done, and done. We need to rebuild our development pipeline anyway, he grinned. Any particular candidate in mind? Anthony glanced at Sam, whose expression transformed from surprise to disbelief to barely contained excitement in rapid succession. Perhaps. Anthony turned back to Thompson. I'll need to see genuine talent first, not just enthusiasm. Mike finally found his voice, stepping forward with desperate bonhomie. This is wonderful news. Elite Performance would be honored to collaborate with Velocity Racing on— I don't think so, Thompson cut him off coldly. Henderson filled me in on your hospitality toward my future chief engineer. He looked around the garage deliberately. I make it a policy not to work with shops that judge expertise by appearance rather than demonstration. The silence that followed was absolute. Mike stood frozen, the full consequences of his earlier behavior becoming devastatingly clear. Anthony turned to Henderson. Your Porsche still needs that custom resonator. And you're exactly the person to design it, Henderson replied with a grin. At Velocity's facilities, I presume? Thompson nodded. We'll transport the car this afternoon. Williams can supervise the fabrication himself. Mike made one last desperate attempt. Mr. Thompson, surely we can discuss this. Elite Performance has always maintained the highest standards of— Dignity isn't determined by circumstances, Anthony interrupted quietly. Neither is expertise. He turned to face Mike directly. That's the lesson here, isn't it? The simple statement, delivered without anger or triumph, resonated through the garage. Several mechanics nodded unconsciously, the truth of it impossible to deny. Thompson clapped Anthony on the shoulder. Come on, Williams. We've got a lot to catch up on, and you look like you could use a proper meal. He glanced at Anthony's worn clothing. And perhaps a stop at the department store on the way to the office. Anthony shouldered his backpack, the one possession he wouldn't leave behind. Inside, the racing gloves remained wrapped in plastic, a talisman that had seen him through the darkest times. As they turned to leave, Sam stepped forward impulsively. Mr. Williams. When Anthony looked at him, the young mechanic swallowed nervously. That thing you did with the resonator chamber, I've never seen anything like it. It was brilliant. For the first time, Anthony smiled, a small but genuine expression that transformed his weathered face. The principle isn't complicated. The application takes practice. Would you be willing to explain the theory sometime? Sam asked. Bring your resume to Velocity next week, Anthony replied. We'll see. Sam's face lit up with undisguised hope. Yes, sir, absolutely. Anthony nodded to Henderson, then followed Thompson toward the door. As they reached it, he paused and turned back to survey the garage one last time, not with triumph or vindication, but with simple acknowledgement of the journey completed. Expertise doesn't need validation to exist. He didn't raise his voice, but every person heard him clearly. It simply waits to be recognized. The door closed behind them, leaving Elite Performance in profound silence, each person contemplating how quickly certainty could be upended when skill overcame appearance. Mike stood motionless in the center of his domain, authority irreparably diminished. The most valuable person to enter his garage had been the one he'd been quickest to dismiss, a lesson in judgment that would echo through his business for years to come. The garage remained silent for several long moments after the door closed. Mechanics exchanged glances, no one quite ready to articulate what they had witnessed. Mike stood frozen, his carefully constructed professional image shattered in the space of a single morning. Sam was the first to move, gathering the tools Anthony had used and carefully returning them to their proper places. His movements were deliberate, almost reverent, as if handling instruments that had become significant through association. Did that really just happen? One of the mechanics finally asked, his voice unnaturally loud in the quiet garage. The homeless guy we laughed at just got hired as chief engineer at Velocity Racing, another confirmed, shaking his head in disbelief. And we lost Henderson's business in the process. Mike suddenly snapped into motion, retreating toward his office with quick steps. Back to work, everyone. We've got other clients waiting. His voice lacked its usual authority, the command falling flat in the transformed atmosphere. No one moved immediately. The mechanics looked at each other, then at the silver Porsche, the vehicle that had catalyzed the morning's extraordinary events. He knew exactly what was wrong just by listening to it, Sam said, still organizing the toolbox. No diagnostics, no computer, just new. And we treated him like garbage, another mechanic added quietly. Sam straightened up, decision visibly forming. I'm going to apply for that apprenticeship. He looked around at his colleagues. You all saw what he did. That wasn't luck or a guess. That was, I don't even have words for it. One of the older mechanics nodded slowly. I've been working on performance engines for 20 years, and I've never seen anyone diagnose harmonic resonance by ear. He glanced toward Mike's closed office door, then lowered his voice. You should go for it, kid. Opportunity like that doesn't come twice. The garage gradually returned to movement, mechanics drifting back to their stations, but the rhythm was off. Each person processing their part in the morning's events, reconsidering assumptions that had seemed unquestionable hours earlier. Sam approached the Porsche, running his hand along its sleek flank. He said the left rear damper was showing early signs of failure, he murmured. How could he possibly know that? Curiosity overcoming hesitation, he retrieved a floor jack and lifted the rear of the vehicle. Removing the wheel revealed the expensive performance damper visually identical to its counterpart on the right side. Sam examined it carefully, finding nothing obvious until he noticed a barely perceptible seepage around the upper seal, the earliest indicator of future failure, visible only to someone who knew exactly where to look. Unbelievable, he whispered. Mike emerged from his office 30 minutes later, his expression carefully reset to business as usual. Henderson's team will be here at 2 to collect the Porsche, he announced to no one in particular. Sam, make sure it's detailed before they arrive. Yes, sir. Sam hesitated, then added, I checked the left rear damper. It's beginning to fail, just like William said, very early stages. Mike's composure slipped momentarily. Just make sure the car looks perfect when they pick it up. He retreated back to his office without further comment. The morning continued in this strange, subdued atmosphere, outwardly normal, but fundamentally altered. Conversations remained minimal, each person absorbed in their own thoughts. The easy camaraderie that typically filled the garage had evaporated, replaced by quiet reflection. Shortly before noon, Mike emerged again and approached Sam, who was meticulously detailing Henderson's Porsche. You're really thinking of applying at Velocity? He asked, attempting casual interest but failing to mask his concern. Sam nodded without looking up from his work. Yes, sir. You know, Elite could match whatever they're offering. You've got potential, Sam. I've always seen that. Sam's hands stilled for a moment. It's not about the money, Mr. Donovan. He chose his next words carefully. It's about learning from someone who sees things the rest of us miss. Mike absorbed this, nodding slowly. I misjudged the situation this morning. We all did. Yes, sir. We did. Sam resumed his detailing, the conversation clearly finished from his perspective. Mike stood awkwardly for another moment before walking away. The dynamic between employer and employee irrevocably shifted. At precisely 2 o'clock, a Velocity racing transport vehicle arrived. The team that emerged wore the unmistakable uniforms of a professional racing operation, crisp, organized, efficient. They were led by a woman whose authoritative presence suggested significant responsibility. We're here for the Henderson GT3, she announced, scanning the garage. I'm Claire Reeves, Velocity Operations Manager. Mike stepped forward immediately, professional smile firmly in place. Of course. The vehicle is prepared and ready for transport. He extended his hand. Mike Donovan, owner of Elite Performance. Claire accepted the handshake with cool professionalism. Mr. Thompson mentioned your shop. Her tone made it clear exactly what Thompson had said. The car has been cleared for transport by our chief engineer. No additional inspection will be necessary. The significance wasn't lost on anyone present. Anthony Williams, the man they had ridiculed hours earlier, now held the authority to make such determinations. As the velocity team prepared the Porsche for loading, Claire approached Sam, who was watching the process with barely disguised interest. "You're Sam?" she asked directly. Surprised, he nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Williams mentioned you might be submitting an application." Her expression remained neutral, assessing. "He said you showed genuine curiosity about harmonics." Sam straightened unconsciously. "I want to understand how he diagnosed that resonance issue. I've never seen anything like it." Claire studied him for a moment, then handed him a business card. "Send your resume directly to this email. Include today's date in the subject line." Sam accepted the card with careful reverence. "Thank you. I will." The Porsche was secured in the transport vehicle with practiced efficiency. As the team prepared to depart, Claire addressed Mike one final time. "Mr. Williams asked me to convey a message," she said, her tone professionally detached. "He said that expertise often comes from unexpected sources, and the best mechanics remain students their entire careers." The words weren't delivered with malice, but their impact was unmistakable. Mike nodded stiffly, unable to formulate a response that wouldn't sound hollow. As the velocity team departed with Henderson's Porsche, the garage fell quiet once more. The morning's extraordinary events had concluded, leaving elite performance fundamentally changed, not by equipment or personnel, but by a shift in understanding that couldn't be reversed. 3 months later, Sam pulled his modest sedan into the visitor parking area at Velocity Racing's technical headquarters. The sprawling facility, with its state-of-the-art equipment and championship trophies displayed in the lobby, still impressed him, even after weeks of apprenticeship under Anthony Williams. He grabbed his notebook and the technical manual he'd been studying, mentally reviewing the harmonic calculations he'd been practicing. Today marked a significant milestone, his first track test, where he would apply the Williams method independently, under the creator's watchful eye. The security guard recognized him immediately. "Morning, Sam. Mr. Williams is already in the development bay." "Thanks, Joe." The casual exchange still felt surreal, being known by name at one of racing's premier operations. Sam made his way through the facility, nodding to the engineers and technicians who had become colleagues. When he reached the development bay, he paused in the doorway, taking in the scene before him. Anthony Williams stood at the center of a small group, explaining a complex modification to a carbon fiber intake system. Gone were the worn clothes and weathered appearance from that fateful morning at Elite Performance. The Anthony Williams who had emerged was the man who had always existed beneath the circumstances. Confident, articulate, commanding respect without demanding it. His new position came with proper compensation, company housing, and the restoration of his professional identity. But watching him work, Sam recognized that these external changes were merely the world realigning to the truth that had never changed. Anthony Williams was a mechanical genius whose expertise had remained intact through the darkest circumstances. Anthony noticed Sam and concluded his explanation to the group. "We'll implement these changes for tomorrow's test. Sam will be handling the harmonic balancing under my supervision." The team dispersed to their tasks, and Anthony beckoned Sam over to a workbench where components for a racing engine were arranged with meticulous precision. "Right on time," Anthony noted with approval. "How's the resonance study coming?" Sam placed his notebook on the bench. "I think I understand the mathematical model now, but applying it to different engine configurations is still challenging." "It should be," Anthony replied simply. "Harmonics isn't just mathematics. It's feel, intuition built on experience." He gestured to the components. "Today, you'll start developing that intuition." For the next hour, Anthony guided Sam through the practical application of theories that had previously existed only on paper and in simulations. His teaching style was patient but demanding, expecting excellence while providing the tools to achieve it. "The resonance point changes with temperature," Anthony explained as Sam adjusted a component. "The theoretical model tells you where to start, but track conditions require adaptation." Like what you did with Henderson's Porsche that day, Sam observed. You adapted to the specific conditions. Anthony nodded. Exactly. Books teach principles. Experience teaches application. As they worked, Claire approached with a tablet in hand. Henderson's team just clinched their third victory using your modifications, she reported. He's asking if you'll consult on their new GT4 project as well. Schedule permitting, Anthony replied without looking up from the precise adjustment he was demonstrating. Our primary commitment remains here. Claire nodded and made a note. Also, Mike Donovan from Elite Performance called again. 4th time this month. At this, Anthony paused briefly. Same request? Yes. He wants to discuss a mutually beneficial collaboration between Elite and Velocity. Her tone made her opinion of the idea clear. Anthony returned to his work. Tell him what I told him before. We are not currently seeking additional development partners. Claire smiled slightly. With pleasure. She departed, leaving Anthony and Sam to their technical work. After she left, Sam hesitated before asking the question that had lingered for months. You never considered his offer, did you? No. Anthony's response was straightforward, without bitterness or triumph. Because of how he treated you? Anthony adjusted a component with minute precision before responding. Because of what his treatment revealed about his judgment. He looked up, meeting Sam's gaze directly. This industry requires recognizing excellence regardless of its packaging. Mike evaluates worth based on appearances, not demonstrations. That creates blind spots no successful team can afford. Sam nodded slowly, absorbing the lesson beyond its immediate context. As they returned to their work, a familiar figure appeared at the entrance to the development bay. Jake Thompson approached with the confident stride of a man whose teams had dominated racing circuits for years. Williams, the new intake design is testing off the charts, he announced with evident satisfaction. The harmonic improvements gave us a 3% efficiency gain across the power band. Anthony acknowledged this with a modest nod. The carbon layup technique made the difference. Sam's analysis of the resonance points helped refine the final shape. Thompson turned to Sam with newfound interest. Did it now? Picking up the master's techniques already. Trying to, sir, Sam replied. There's a lot to learn. Speaking of learning, Thompson continued, turning back to Anthony, the Racing Engineering Institute called. They want you to present your harmonic balancing methodology at next month's symposium. Apparently, your return to the industry has created quite a buzz among the technical community. Anthony's expression remained composed, but Sam noticed the subtle straightening of his shoulders. Pride properly contained but present nonetheless. I'll need to prepare proper documentation, Anthony said thoughtfully. The principles deserve formal publication after all these years. Already arranged, Thompson replied with satisfaction. Full technical support team at your disposal. He clapped Anthony on the shoulder, a gesture of professional respect between equals. From scapegoat to industry standard bearer in 3 months. Not bad, Williams. Not bad at all. After Thompson departed, Anthony and Sam returned to their work in comfortable silence. Eventually, Sam voiced the observation that had been forming since his first day at Velocity. It's like you never left, he said. Everyone here treats you as if those years away didn't happen. Anthony considered this as he made a precise adjustment to a component. The years happened. They changed me. He paused, selecting his next words carefully. But skill remains when everything else is stripped away. That's the lesson I hope you're learning beyond the harmonics. Sam nodded slowly. That expertise exists independent of recognition. Exactly. Anthony straightened up, surveying their work with critical eyes. Excellence doesn't require an audience to be valid. A rare smile crossed his face. But it certainly deserves one eventually. As they prepared the components for track testing, Sam reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought him here. How a chance encounter with a homeless man had transformed not only Anthony's life, but his own professional trajectory. The technical skills he was acquiring were invaluable, but the deeper lesson transcended mechanics. True expertise endures beyond circumstances, waiting to be recognized by those wise enough to look past appearances. Excellence waits to be discovered, not announced. The principle Anthony had demonstrated that morning at Elite Performance had become the foundation of Sam's developing professional philosophy. Later that afternoon, as they stood in the pit lane watching their modifications tested on the track, Anthony turned to Sam with unexpected candor. "There were nights on the street when I questioned whether what I knew still mattered," he admitted quietly, "whether expertise without application retained any value." Sam waited, sensing more would follow. "The answer came that morning at Elite," Anthony continued, his eyes following the race car as it navigated the track with newfound precision. "Knowledge persists. Opportunity fluctuates. The trick is surviving the gap between them with your skills intact." The race car roared past them, its engine note perfectly harmonized, a mechanical symphony tuned by their combined expertise. The sound represented more than engineering excellence. It was the audible proof of talent recognized, potential restored, and dignity reclaimed. For Anthony Williams, the greatest victory wasn't returning to his former status, it was proving that his worth had never diminished, even when the world had failed to see it. Did you enjoy this tale of hidden talent and redemption? If Anthony's journey from being dismissed to reclaiming his rightful place touched something in you, there are many more powerful stories waiting on the PAP Stories channel. Every week, we bring you carefully crafted narratives that showcase the triumph of human spirit, unexpected twists of fate, and moments that remind us to look beyond appearances. Like this video if you believe in second chances and the power of expertise to overcome prejudice. Subscribe to PAP Stories for your regular dose of compelling narratives that entertain while revealing deeper truths about our shared humanity. Our growing library of moral storytelling features characters you'll remember long after the story ends.